Paul Ryan would never issue a subpoena. I don't say right or wrong. He wouldn't do it. He had too much respect for our country. Nancy Pelosi hands him out like cookies. Everybody, I don't even know these people. For the most part, people like that at testify, I don't even know who they are. I never even heard of some of them, most of them.
Weaponizing the process against President Trump, against this White House. Our friend Andy McCarthy is back in the house. He is Fox News contributor, author, also senior editor, National Review. Andy, great to have you back.
Buck, always great.
Impeachment inquiry proceeding thus far. I mean, from the procedural standpoint, what is kind of okay? What's dirty? Democrats really doing?
Well, the Democrats from the beginning, Buck, have decided that the president's not fit for office. So they've already kind of made their decision, and they've been looking for a hook that they could hang it on in the way of impeachable offenses. The Mueller investigation came up dry, so now they're on to the Ukraine thing. And this is unusual and irregular in what generally happens, not that we have that much experience with impeachment, is that the president commits misconduct and we deduce from the misconduct whether it's so serious that impeachment is warranted. Here, instead, we have a situation where the Democrats decided ahead of time, before he ever stepped into the Oval Office, that Trump was unfit, and they're looking for something to sort of hang that conclusion on from the beginning. So this is what we now have is the Ukrainian episode in this effort.
Now, Andy, what about the claims that the White House is making that they're not going to comply? How does that duel between the executive branch and the Democrat-controlled House pushing forward on this impeachment inquiry? You know, where does that go? And what's the White House arguing about who does or doesn't have to testify? And what is the Democrat House majority going to say, or Democrat led by Nancy Pelosi going to say?
Yeah, Buck, the important thing to remember with these kind of contests between the executive and the legislative branches is that they are political in nature. But impeachment is political in nature. It's not a legal process for assessing guilt. It's a political process for stripping political authority. So what the president is trying to do is demonstrate that or demonstrate to the public, which is the court that matters here, that the impeachment inquiry is illegitimate because the Constitution commits the authority to impeach, the whole of it, to the House of Representatives, not to the Speaker and not to a cabal of, partisan committee chairmen. And because the House acts as an institution only when it votes, and the House has never voted to have an impeachment inquiry, the president is arguing that the impeachment inquiry is illegitimate and he doesn't need to cooperate with it. Plus, he has a lot of privileges against cooperation, like executive privilege most prominently, which is only going to be pierced by something that's in the nature of serious misconduct and which he shouldn't be asked to give up unless the House, as an institution, votes to have an impeachment inquiry. So that's their position. The House's position is that there's nothing in the Constitution that requires it to have a vote in order to inquire, that it has these standing committees that have authority so they can conduct an impeachment inquiry through the offices of those committees without having to have a vote, and that their subpoenas are perfectly legitimate and the administration should honor them because Congress has oversight power whether it's conducting an impeachment inquiry or not. And the political hammer that they hold in the equation is that if the president doesn't cooperate, they can always add an article of impeachment about failing to cooperate with legitimate demands for information by Congress. So this is the political battle that takes place, and it really depends on what the public thinks of all this. My own view of it, for what it's worth, is that the underlying conduct here related to Ukraine, I think there's a lot of things to criticize the president about in it, but I don't think any of it rises to the level of impeachable offenses.
I mean,
And
would
I
you
think
describe it as ugly politics by the president? I mean, how do you gauge? How do you assess the whole Ukraine situation? Where is the president vulnerable, and what's a fair way of framing it?
I think it's unsavory conduct in the sense that the Congress voted for aid for Ukraine. The president signed off on the legislation. He should have just given the aid to Ukraine. There's nothing wrong in principle with a president asking a foreign government for help in an American Justice Department investigation, but the Justice Department didn't ask the president to lean on Ukraine for help. So the fact that he did it without, usually when these things happen, Buck, in the Justice Department, it's because the Justice Department is doing an investigation. It realizes it needs assistance from a foreign government. And if the foreign government doesn't cooperate, like, for example, the Saudis didn't cooperate with us in connection with the Khobar Towers bombing in the mid-'90s, you ask the president to lean on the other government to help you. Here, there was no discussion, apparently, between Attorney General Barr and the president kind of unsolicited not only asked his Ukrainian counterpart to help Barr, he simultaneously asked him to help Rudy Giuliani, who was the president's private lawyer and is conducting research in Ukraine that might be helpful to Trump's 2020 campaign to the extent it's damaging to Biden. So what Trump risks doing is exactly what the Justice Department doesn't want done, which is the sense that its investigation of the 2016, the abuses of power in connection with 2016, that is political rather than what the Attorney General has stressed up until now, which is that it's the Justice Department's obligation to look back at this kind of misbehavior and see if any crimes were committed and if any procedures have to be changed. So I think, the way the president handled this, he potentially brings discredit and delegitimizes the Justice Department's investigation and bounds it up with his own 2020 reelection effort, which is exactly the way the Democrats have tried to portray the Barr investigation from the beginning. So I think those things are all ways that I think you can legitimately say the president this was not perfect, as the president likes to say. On the other hand, Buck, we have to take a step back and realize Ukraine did get the aid. It never really did get held up in any way that was meaningful or harmful. And the Justice Department was never in communication with the White House or with the Ukrainian authorities, so it didn't really affect the Justice Department's investigation. So the atmospherics are bad, but when you look at this and say, well, what harm actually happened, there doesn't appear to be any. So to talk about it in the sense of an impeachable offense, which is supposed to be reserved for really egregious misconduct that does real harm, is really, I think, overwrought.
What is the argument that, I keep hearing from Pelosi and others, he violated his oath of office to the Constitution. Is that just a general thing to say, or is there some specific way they try to tie this in? I keep wondering, what is the alleged, if not even crime, the alleged political crime that they think comes up in Ukraine? Because, I mean, what you're pointing out are, there's some procedural, some procedural missteps. It looks a little sloppy the way the president did it, sure. But what is the real, because initially, Andy, they were saying there's a possible campaign finance criminal violation, and that just faded away because that was too absurd to even hang their hats on. So what is it now?
Yeah. So I think there's two things, Buck, and both of them are pretty weak. One is that the president is supposed to take care that the laws be faithfully executed. And the Congress voted aid for Ukraine, which the president slow-walked rather than delivering it to Ukraine on schedule. So that's outside the statute as Congress enacted it and that the president signed off on. But on the other hand, the president has almost plenary authority under the Constitution to conduct foreign relations. And while he shouldn't delay aid for anything but very good reasons, he's got the authority to do that. So I think it's a pretty weak argument. The other one that's even weaker, I think, is this new thing they're floating, which is about extortion and the idea that the president pressured the Ukrainians in order to get accommodations from them, including some that might have helped him politically. The problem with that, Buck, is that extortion is a domestic crime. It is not applicable to foreign relations, where we actually want the president to be able to squeeze foreign governments and put a lot of pressure on them in the service.
Right.
Of
And
American
this is what Mulvaney was basically trying to say, perhaps inartfully, where he's like, we do quid pro quos with foreign governments all the time. That's very true.
Exactly. Right. So, what you're doing is apples, or what they're doing is apples and oranges. Yes, there are situations where when somebody pressures another person, threatening them with economic harm or other kinds of harm in order to get them to do something, that's extortion. And it's a federal crime, and it's a crime in most states. In foreign relations, where we're not under the rule of law and we're not all dealing, we're not all just like citizens under the same sovereign, countries pressure other countries in order to get them to do things. And sometimes that pressure gets to the point of war. So, it's not domestic law enforcement. And again, can you imagine what would be the point of having a president of the United States if the president could not use whatever was available to him to pressure governments, which are often rogue governments that are anti-American, to do things that we want them to do in the interest of American security and global stability?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that George W. Bush said, hand over bin Laden, Taliban, or else we're coming for you with everything we got. So,
Right.
And they were technically the government of Afghanistan at the time, folks. So there was that.
Yeah, and I don't think the Justice Department investigated Bush for extortion.
Yeah, I would certainly hope not. Andy McCarthy, everybody, the one and only. Check out his latest on nationalreview.com. Also, great editorial this week in the New York Post on impeachment. Andy, thank you for joining us, sir. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Buck.
Welcome back, team. A massive gun battle in Culiacan, northwest of Mexico City, down in Mexico, involving the son of the most notorious cartel leader, perhaps of all time, maybe only second to Pablo Escobar, El Chapo Guzman. His son was captured in Culiacan. His son's name is Ovidio Guzman Lopez. So he's a son of Joaquin Guzman Loera, who is known as El Chapo. The Sinaloa cartel leader is currently serving a life sentence plus 30 years. The Mexican police managed to find this son of El Chapo, and you would think that this would be a cause for celebration, but then the entire city erupted in chaos, gun battles. There were cartel sicarios, their assassins, deployed in the streets with 50 caliber rifles. There were cartel members who had mounted machine guns. There's video all over the internet now, social media, of just gun battles raging. It sounds like Fallujah circa 2005. Just machine gun fire all over the place, smoke billowing into the air. And what was truly stunning is the Mexican authorities released Ovidio Guzman Lopez, released El Chapo's son, because they were afraid of further bloodshed. That's right, my friends. A notorious cartel boss is captured and then released because the cartels can put so much firepower on the streets, they can effectively take an entire city in Mexico hostage. They outgunned Mexican police and federal police units. Outgunned them. They were calling in for reinforcements, and the cartel hitmen were able to just bring too much fire under their locations. They had to withdraw. Stunning. We were going to have my friend Yon Grillo join us today from Mexico City, but actually having trouble getting through on the phone lines there. So we'll have to have Yon back next week to tell us what's going on. So sorry about the guest lineup change-up, but we'll have Yon joining us when we can. And I just would note that Mexico had last year I can't remember if 2017 or 2018, it was one of those years, the worst year in the history of that country for murders. We have an opioid epidemic. Yes, I know there's billions and billions of dollars that are going to be paid out now by drug companies that did have a very egregious hand in the opioid epidemic. But you know what else has a big part of the opioid epidemic? The cartels that are flooding this country with it. And the Mexican government, while we think of it as somewhat in control of the situation, or I should say, we don't hear much about it, so people assume it can't be that bad. It's really bad. I mean, what does it mean? Imagine for a moment that there was a gang member in the United States who was seized in, let's say, Boston, a good-sized American city. And that gang member was able to put out the call that all of his hitmen needed to start attacking police units all across the city. And then the authorities in Boston were like, well, we can't handle all this heat, so we're just going to let this guy go. What a sad day for the country of Mexico. That's the response? You allow a cartel member to take a city hostage? You release him? What message does that send going forward? Anytime any member of the cartel who's senior enough gets picked up by Mexican Marines, the Federales, or whomever, they're just going to say, okay, well, now we're gonna wire up a school with C4 unless you let me free. This is negotiating with terrorists in the worst possible way, with narco-terrorists. And it's just a big indicator of how deeply, not just corrupt, but really unstable Mexico is. It's stable insofar as the cartels are able to keep poisoning American cities and killing tens of thousands of our fellow Americans, making billions and billions of dollars in the process, also making hundreds of millions off of human smuggling at our southern border. Kids in cages, they yell. Yeah, but the cartels are making a lot of money in that whole process, by the way. And yet the media has so little interest in this. The amount of effort spent covering the Turkish casualties in northern Syria in the last week versus the amount of time spent on cartel murders in Mexico and cartel-affiliated murders in the United States through overdoses, it's stunning when you just compare how much more interest there is in what's going on in northern Syria than right along our own border in ways that affect the safety and security of our fellow Americans every day. Every day. But you see, we don't want to be too critical in the media of what's going on in Mexico, of course. There are sensitivities there that the media has. We don't want to be beating up on the Mexican government or what's going on there. Well, things are really rough right now. And when you can have a whole city taken hostage by cartel sicarios, you've got big problems. And I think the more that we find out about the corruption in Mexico, I mean, it goes all the way to the top of the government, by the way. The whole thing's a total mess, and it's right on our southern border. Here's the truth. Mexico's crime, dysfunction, and narco trafficking is a much bigger national security issue for us than Syria is. Now, team, I promise we're not going to do a daily Tulsi Gabbard defense here. Okay, we're not going to just have Buck sit here every day and say that Tulsi. And what he wrote in that Tulsi's married. I know she's married. Okay, I'm not. This show is not some audio bouquet of flowers sent to Tulsi Gabbard on a regular basis in the hopes that she'll notice and perhaps come in for a lengthy interview. That would clearly go viral and be fantastic. But I try to find the good in the Democrats that I can where I can. And that's why I also like to point out the really, really bad Democrats, which reminds me of Hillary Clinton. Hello? What happened? She's back. She's never going away. She will haunt your dreams. She's never going away, folks. She will always be around. She said something today in an interview, or maybe it was yesterday. Who cares? But she said the following about Tulsi Gabbard. Quote, "They're also going to do third party again. I'm not making any predictions." Means she is. But I think they've got their eye on someone who's currently in the Democratic primary and are grooming her to be the third party candidate. She's the favorite of the Russians. They have a bunch of sites and bots and other ways of supporting her so far. And that's assuming Jill Stein will give it up, which she might not because she's also a Russian asset. Yeah, she's a Russian asset. I mean, totally. They know they can't win without a third-party candidate, so I don't know who it's going to be, But I will guarantee you they will have a vigorous third-party challenge in the key states that they most needed. Okay, first of all, isn't it amazing that Hillary Clinton says that she's not going to make a prediction, and then she goes on to make a prediction about the election where she says, I guarantee you. So it's not even like a little bit of a prediction. This is a very, very intense prediction from Hillary Clinton. But beyond that, more importantly, they hate Tulsi Gabbard because she is, in some ways, too nice to the opposition for their taste. And she hates Trump, and she trashes Trump all the time. But she does not approach Republicans as though they are some evil, diseased, and unworthy group of people. She doesn't take the approach that they're just automatically to be dismissed. And what you find is that the Democratic Party today, rejects that. They want a total war scenario of politics where you either take the approach that Republicans are horrible people, that they're disgusting, they're disgraceful, and you shouldn't. And anyone, I mean, I had a friend tell me recently that, that he was told in a group chat of people for a business issue, that anyone who voted for Trump is racist. And people challenged this guy on this and said, come on, that can't, that's, first of all, there are a lot of black and Hispanic voters who voted for Trump. I mean, not as a percentage of the population, but there are still a lot of them across the country. To say that anyone who voted for Trump is racist is and this guy doubled down. Oh, no, it's true. Anyone who voted for Trump is racist. And we've had different points in the process here where Democrats, their official line from their biggest spokespersons has been, you are complicit in Trump's racism, in his treason, in his all these things, if you vote for him, trying so hard to really just force people listening to believe that it's not even a choice anymore to vote for Trump, because if you do, you're a bad person. So you must then support his opponents. You must support the other side. Tulsi Gabbard doesn't do that, at least not that I've heard. But to call her a Russian asset, I just wonder, does anyone in the Democratic Party have any scruples anymore? They're not going to say, Tulsi Gabbard is a veteran. She is a member of Congress. What basis is there that this is even worse than the Assad apologist stuff they used to say about her. Now they're saying that she's a traitor. She's a tool of the Russian government. Something they say about Trump, too. Isn't that interesting? Isn't it also fascinating to watch people make allegations like this that are so flimsy and so without any evidence whatsoever? But this becomes a tool, because once you create the perception that there are Russian assets floating around who are doing whatever is opposed to the Democratic Party at any point in time, then that becomes a weapon in and of itself. It just becomes a smear to be deployed at the whim of Democrats, including against a fellow Democrat in this case, Tulsi.
It's time for roll call.
Roll call time. Everybody, you know what time it is. Time for the roll call. Facebook.com/Buck Sexton. If you want to do it that way, you can also kick it a little old school. Send us an email, teambuck@iheartmedia.com. That's right, Producer Brennan. We have an email now. We're fancy up in the Freedom Hut,
Congratulations.
Yeah, we should start like smoking pipes and wearing ascots and talking about theater, not theater, theater.
With a monocle.
How else would one watch theater?
Duh.
With a top hat, maybe, too. That's how I roll. Although you'd need a giant top hat for my head. I don't know.
Like Slash?
Ooh, yeah.
There you go.
He's probably the most famous top hat wearer of the last several generations.
Other than Mr. Peanut, I guess.
Yeah, that's probably true. Mr. Peanut. All right. Here we go. Mitch, right? Oh, here we go. Hey, Buck, I love your show. I drive over the road for a big company. I work nights. I listen every night. Thank you so much, Mitch. Also, why haven't the climate freaks mentioned the fact that carbonated beverages are carbonated with CO2? Are they willing to force soft drink makers, beer brewers, and champagne makers out of business? I'm guessing that will be many, many billions of dollars removed from the economy and many tens of thousands of jobs lost. Surely soft drinks, etc., contribute way more CO2 to the atmosphere than cows. Well, Mitch, my man, it's methane from the cows that's the problem. It's not the CO2 that gets them so upset. Anyway, love your show, brother. Shields high. Thank you, Mitch. Appreciate it, my man. I'm glad to keep you safe and warm on the road when you're driving around the country, engaged in commerce and capitalism for America. How? In this week's Democrat debate, how many candidates and how many times did they say that I am too ignorant to know how to spend my own money? And who and how many times a day do they say they knew how to spend my money better than me? Instead of adding to my government expense, they're free to raise charity money for any cause they are passionate about. They are all very good at raising money for a cause. Why not apply that skill to fund charity from those that agree with them and allow me to decide how to spend my money? Donald Trump may not be the most diplomatic person, but he understands this simple concept built on freedom. Yeah, man, they want to take your money. They think that they can spend it better than you. They think they're more qualified to make those determinations about capital allocation. Fancy way to say spending. So yeah, you're picking up what they're putting down, Hal, and they want to pick up a lot more of your money too, which is not good. Kristen writes, Train to Busan is amazing. You have to see it. Well, that's producer Brandon pick over here. So what are we thinking?
It's great. I've just seen so many zombie movies over the last, my lifetime, whatever. But this one was very creative. It just was special. You would think the whole genre was used up, but they found a new way to do it.
So I think I'm going to see the Joker movie today, by the way.
Oh, I'm probably going to see that tomorrow.
Yeah. So I might go. I'm somebody. I just like to go check it out. I got to know what's going on with the Joker. And then we got TJ. See a Joker, but I am not a midnight toker.
Steve Miller.
Right? Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I play my music in the sun, though.
Are we going to keep doing this?
No, I'm going to stop. All right, TJ. Buck, if impeachment goes through, how much obligation do senators have to be in D.C. for the entirety of the hearings in the Senate? And how long do you think McConnell could drag it out? I only ask because this could be a major thorn in the side for several Democrat presidential campaigns. Warren, Sanders, Klobuchar, Harris, Booker. They're going to punish us with process. Should we not be obligated to return the favor? TJ, the problem with trying to punish Democrats with process is it's like throwing mud at pigs. They love the process. They love wallowing in the bureaucracy. So I just don't think that that's going to work out. I wish that we had the same mentality of abusing the various processes out there, but we just don't. Actually, I don't wish we had that mentality. It would be nice if we could fight fire with fire a little bit better, but that's kind of where we are. And I honestly don't. I mean, impeachment, the thing is, no one really knows how this will play out as a process because the Democrats are making it up as they go along. So unless you can get in the mind of Nancy Pelosi and know what her next move is going to be, it's tough to know what's going on. Jonathan, Buck, I think your best impression is your Pelosi.
It always makes me laugh. I've been following through with Pelosi for a while.
Anyway, thank you, Jonathan. I appreciate that. He also writes, I'm looking at the withdrawal from Syria and think it should be noted the Syrian Kurds, YPG, and Iranian Kurds are not all the same. To borrow a Lord of the Rings analogy, it's like comparing the woodland elves to the Riverdale ones. Riverdale ones? Isn't it? No, is it Riverdale elves? No, Riverdale's a place in New York.
Isn't Riverdale like from Dawson's Creek or something?
Isn't it like River End or River Run or something like that?
I've actually never seen it.
Riverdale is also a show.
That's what I'm thinking of.
Yeah, it's a show. It's a kind of a teen drama-y show.
Right.
But it's also a wealthy enclave. I believe a wealthy enclave, technically, of the Bronx. Yes,
I learned something.
A
today.
bit of geography on the show today for the Buck Sexton show. Yeah, I don't know enough about the comparison you're making here, Jonathan. But thank you so much, my friend, for listening to the show. I'm glad
you like Pelosi. Pelosi's going to send you a big hug over the weekend. Okay. President Trump is a total lunatic.
Greg writes, hey, Buck, longtime listener here. You've long been at the top of my list for clear, concise, and comprehensive analysis. without wasting time repeating the same points or puffing yourself up in the process. Thank you, Greg, for noticing that. I do note that there are some hosts out there. There's only one who I think has earned the right to always talk about how awesome he is, and we all know who that is, and that's because he is the man. But there are some other hosts out there who are, I'm the best, I'm amazing, I'm the smartest. I leave that to the people listening to determine how good or not good this show is. You know, I don't need to tell everybody how good the show is, because anybody who's smart who listens to the show knows it's really good. So, here we go. Greg writes, in regard to assault rifles, my preferred term is modern sporting rifle. This term has been used widely among the Second Amendment community, and a couple of years ago, the Washington Examiner had an op-ed on why this is the term that our side should adopt. I've included a link. Keep up the good work. Best wishes. Shields high, Greg. Greg, thank you. I mean, I can see what you're saying, and I appreciate the desire to use the term modern sporting rifle. I just I don't think that the other side will play along with that one. So we could just use different terms for the same thing, and I don't know. I don't really know where that ends up, where that goes. Sean, the Joker is not a superhero or supervillain movie. It's dry for a drama and weak as a horror film. If you watch it expecting anything like a superhero movie, you will be severely disappointed. It is literally a boring backstory movie. Only thing making it worthwhile is when he takes Robert De Niro out. Have you heard this? That it's boring from anybody? This is the first. Someone doesn't like the Joker movie.
That might be the first, I think.
Yeah.
I think that's somebody trying to be different.
Some people just don't like certain things. Why so serious? Heath Ledger's Joker was really scary and really good at the same time.
I still like Jack Nicholson's.
What?
It's just, I don't know. He was special. That's the one I grew up on, so he'll always have a place in my heart. You just don't like it at all? Or just not above Heath Ledger?
I mean, he did a pretty good job, I guess, for what it was. I mean, that original Tim Burton Batman was pretty cool at the time. It holds up reasonably well. Some of the action sequences are really pretty lame, but it holds up reasonably well, I'd say. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, that's maybe.
I wish I can remember the actor's name from the Adam West TV show.
I think he's holding Kim Basinger at one point, and he's like, if anybody else calls you beast, I'll rip their lungs out. I remember that line.
Classic.
So, someone just said that I spoiled. Well, I just spoiled Joker. How could I spoil Joker? I didn't spoil Joker. It's one of our other producers writing into me telling me this is nonsense. That's nonsense. I don't even know the end. How could I spoil it? I don't know the ending.
Good point.
So, anyway, it is what it is. All right. Ali writes, or is it Ali? Ali could be other. Your last thought is right. The Democrats using the Middle East to line their pockets is they caused global chaos. There was gun running. All right, cool. Appreciate that. Sammy, number one, I love your show. I listen to you on the iHeartRadio app, and the news breaks and comes through the NBC fakes news, though. I hope there's something you can do about that. No, unfortunately, I don't. News breaks, I don't get to control. Number two, I heard this morning there are 7 million unfulfilled jobs or unfilled jobs in the U.S. Trump should give the worthless government employees a pink slip to tell them there are jobs waiting for them in the private sector. Well, Sammy, it'd be nice if we could do that, but it's not going to happen because people tend to think that any shrinking of government jobs is a terrible thing and really, really bad, and that's just sort of where it is. So I wish it were true, and there you have it. Or I wish that were feasible, I should say, and there you have it. Here we go. Jeremy, your Joker sounds a lot like your Elizabeth Warren. I guess they're similar in personality. Shields high. I don't know about that. I don't know. I'm not gonna say I'm gonna sign off for that one. Meaning that my impersonation's the same. You can say whatever you want of Elizabeth Warren's personality. Well, she's really gonna just restore all the greatness of America's middle class by just taxing the you-know-what out of the rich people. Oh gosh, my daddy always told me that if you take 2 flying pigs and you throw them through the back door of an Oldsmobile, you're just gonna have a pig sandwich. Makes no sense, but who cares? Because Elizabeth Warren just makes stuff up as she goes along. Yeah, there we have it. This doesn't sound like Heath Ledger, the Joker. Everyone's a critic on the impersonators. All right, so we got to close up the Freedom Hut this episode, this time. You have a couple of days here over the weekend, not just to listen to the show and catch up on old shows, but also to be like, hey, if you're at a dinner party and the conversation's lagging, if you're hanging out with a friend and you got nothing to say, if you're on a date and the lady or the guy is just not interesting enough for you, just be like, so there's this thing called the Buck Sexton Show. It's on iTunes or the iHeart app or anywhere you listen to podcasts. Download it, listen to it. That would be an early Christmas present and birthday present for me. So please check that out. And we will talk to you all on Monday. Shields high.